A missing piece of Sony's next generation gaming cloud service has just been solved, and it involves Microsoft. What's up, everybody? Brad here. Of all the things to come out of left field, this is not what I was expecting. Microsoft and Sony have announced a new partnership, and it explicitly calls out game streaming services. There's no beating around the bush here. Let me just go ahead and actually read the announcement directly from Microsoft. It says, under the memorandum of understanding signed by the parties, the two companies will explore joint development of future cloud solutions in Microsoft Azure to support their respective game and content streaming services. In addition, the two companies will explore the use of current Microsoft Azure data center-based solution for Sony's game and content streaming services. By working together, the companies aim to deliver more enhanced experiences for their worldwide customers. These efforts will include building better development platforms for the community and content creators. Now, there is no beating around the bush. This is very much talking about game streaming services from both platforms. Now, the missing piece here is that Sony obviously does not have a cloud solution, and it seemed pretty obvious that they would go to a company like AWS, or well, Amazon, which has AWS, because they're somewhat of a neutral party. But clearly, Sony is betting on the Microsoft cloud, at least in some capacity. Now, they could be doing a multi-cloud bet where they have some things with AWS, some things with Microsoft, whatever. But still, this is a pretty big deal because this is how Sony is going to develop their next generation streaming platform, and it's going to be on the back of Microsoft, which, if you don't understand why this is fascinating to me, it's because now when people use their strict cloud streaming services on PlayStation 5 or whatever they're building out next, some of that money is going right back to Microsoft. Now, this isn't totally unrelated because Sony already gives Microsoft money and vice versa on some things. And actually, they even talk about how Sony is going to use some of their imaging sensors for Azure and different AI, different products from Microsoft. So there's a little bit of back and forth, but the game streaming is what's obviously fascinating. And we've also seen, obviously, every time Sony uses a computer with a Microsoft license, that goes back to Microsoft. But that is aside from the point. We are talking game streaming and cloud services and next generation stuff, which means Sony is locking up some Azure data services to complete their cloud solution. Now, I know there's going to be fanboys who are going to go crazy and all this stuff, but it makes a lot of sense. Microsoft has a lot of experience here. They have the best cloud. I know AWS makes more money, but Microsoft has more data centers around the world, and there's a lot of reasons why companies choose Azure over AWS. AWS certainly has a lot of fans, and I'm not trying to poo-poo all over them. But this is just fascinating that Sony and Microsoft are joining forces here. And I know that there's some Sony going back to Microsoft here with some of their AI stuff, but this really feels more like, because the announcements lead off with game streaming and content, this really feels like more like Sony locking up the technology it needs to build out its next generation services, which again is good for gamers. The better the solution, the better the industry, the better gaming experiences we all have, which is what we genuinely want. It's just, there's a bit of irony. It's interesting that Sony would choose them, not even Google's cloud or AWS, but they chose Microsoft, and these two companies are going to work together, which hopefully, honestly, should support xCloud as well. I'll be curious to see if any of that xCloud stuff does kind of migrate over to the Sony camp. Are they going to license that? Are they going to work together? There's a lot of things we don't know about this platform, but what we do know for a stated fact is that Sony's game streaming stuff is going to start shipping from Microsoft's platforms. And if Sony thinks Microsoft's platforms are good enough for its services, you can only imagine how good it's going to be for Xbox native services as well. And so here you go. The two biggest juggernauts in gaming, Sony and Microsoft, are both going to be using the same cloud for the next generation. I can't say I saw that one coming.